Can you be friends with depression? This comment from episode 13 was great. KiraScribbles wrote, I learned to be friends with my depression so I could start building structure around it instead of struggling against it and knocking everything down. First, thank you for sharing that. I had never thought about depression quite like that before, but it immediately made sense. Whether we realize it or not, we all have a relationship with our depression. Maybe not a healthy one, maybe not even a conscious one, but a relationship nonetheless. Because depression talks. It has a voice. Sometimes it's loud, sometimes it's so quiet you don't even realize it's speaking. It just becomes the background music of your life. You'll never change. You're too late. Nobody cares. You've already failed. Why bother trying? You're too old. You're too ugly. You're not smart enough. Oh, those are just excuses. You're really just lazy and self-obsessed, borderline narcissistic, simply selfish. If you really cared, you'd try anyhow. If you've ever struggled with depression, those thoughts probably sound familiar. You know it's true, but you know it's not true, but you don't believe it. The frightening thing isn't simply that depression says those things, it's that after hearing them long enough, they start sounding like your own voice. And that's where I think this idea of friendship becomes interesting, because friends don't just talk. Friends make plans together. Friends influence one another. Friends shape how we see ourselves. But maybe before trying to be friends with depression, we ask, what kind of relationship do we have with it in the first place? Do I believe everything it tells me? Do I let it make my decisions? Do I let it define who I am? Do I learn to recognize it without becoming it? Compartmentalize it. That distinction really blew the doors off my self-limiting thoughts, because depression isn't my identity. It's not who I am. It's something I experience. And once I could separate those two, I could finally begin talking back. Not pretending it's not there, not suppressing it, not escaping it, addressing it. Sometimes literally, no, that's not true. I'm not listening to that. Even get stern with it. Screw you. That is not who I am. And naming it when I spot it. Shut up, anxiety. Reasoning with it. I appreciate the concern, but right now I'm doing X. So, say I'm having a good day, motivated, focused, excited. Then the mailman comes, which I associate with bills, which then makes me worried about financial stability. I can choose to follow that path or bounce back to walking in the light. And all of that happens in about 2 seconds of thought, maybe less. Because pathways have already been defined for depression to walk down. So our triggers are almost like automations, and we can rewire them if we can figure out what's under the hood. Prayer is one way to figure that out and get rewired. It's also one of the ways I talk back, but with God, with Jesus. Sometimes I don't even know what I'm feeling, so my prayer becomes simple. God, I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know why I feel this way. Align my heart with yours. Help me see what you see. Help me love what you love. Help me believe what's actually true. I don't suddenly feel euphoric. Remember, not a spell. Most of the time, I don't even notice the shift when it happens. I notice it after the state has changed. The clouds begin to lift. And once I do become aware, there's usually a weird, aren't we supposed to be sad and depressed feeling? Like a confrontation from the depression. And again, I'm at a crossroads. I can either keep chasing that little glimmer of hope or revert back to the doom and gloom. Gratitude can turn that glimmer into a state shift, though. Gratitude is one thing that consistently changes the trajectory. Again, if I cultivate it. What you feed grows, right? In my own life, things will break. I will be devastated. Then they'll mysteriously start working again on their own. Or I'll figure out that it's some kind of user error. And I'll be grateful it works. Almost like God showing me things to be grateful for. And that gratitude is long lasting. Like, now that the door lock has refused to unlock many times while I'm standing in the rain, I thank Jesus every time it unlocks. Seriously. Whereas before, I'd really only react when it didn't work. That can become habitual. Not pretending life is wonderful. Real gratitude. Finding one specific thing, then another, then another. Gratitude and prayer literally go hand in hand. In fact, Paul ties them together. It says, "Do not be anxious for anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your request be made known. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus." Philippians 4:6-7. There's actually some fascinating neuroscience behind this. When we intentionally focus on specific things we're genuinely grateful for, the medial prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain involved in emotional regulation and executive control, becomes more active. As gratitude recruits the medial prefrontal cortex, it down regulates the amygdala. The amygdala's threat response. This reduces the metabolic resources available to sustain the hyperreactive states of the salience network. Neuroimaging research confirms that gratitude and anxiety function as competing network states through inverse functional connectivity and top-down inhibition. The brain starts shifting away from a survival state and toward one that's capable of clearer thinking, appreciation, and connection. Over time, gratitude doesn't merely change how we think. It appears to change how our brains respond to fear. Long-term gratitude intervention literally decreases the gray matter volume and reactivity of the amygdala over time, making it less prone to misfiring panic signals. That's remarkable, because Paul wasn't simply giving us a good moral advice when he wrote, "Rejoice always, pray without ceasing. In everything give thanks, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." 1 Thessalonians 5:16 through 18. Even though Paul obviously didn't know the neuroscience, the practice turns out to recruit the very systems God designed to calm our fears. Gratitude isn't denying reality. It's helping us remember that depression isn't the only reality. Then, once my mind is a little clearer, I come back to those depressive thoughts, not while they're screaming, after I've remembered what's true. That's why journaling has been so helpful. Write the thought down. See it. Name it. Question it. Answer it. Don't just let it echo around in your head, because not every thought deserves your agreement or your sustained attention beyond acknowledgement. And certainly not every voice deserves your trust. So, can we be friends with depression? I think so. But we're going to have a relationship with it. We need to make sure it isn't the one defining us. Because depression has a voice, but it doesn't always have to get the final word.